Kindness is a language which the deaf can hear and the blind can see. Mark Twain. Welcome to the Guyana Dialogue. I'm your host, Shamiza Ali, and it is truly a pleasure to be here with you this evening. Our topic tonight will be the state of trade unionism in Guyana and the future of the sugar industry. The Guyana Dialogue is being sponsored by a coordinating council of Guyanese based in the US, UK, Canada, Guyana, the Caribbean. Funding support is by well known philanthropist Dave Narayan from Dave West Indian Imports. Please welcome my moderator for tonight, Dr. Tara Singh, who is a distinguished political and social scientist.
Thank you very
Welcome,
much,
Dr. Tara.
Shamiza, and welcome to our viewers and welcome to our special guest, Mr. Aslim Singh.
Thank you, Dr. Tara. Our panelists, unfortunately, will not be here tonight, but nevertheless, we will make it a very, very interesting night for you. Our guest tonight is the Secretary of the Guyana Agricultural and General Workers Union. Please welcome Dr. Tara. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you very much, Shamiza. It's a real pleasure.
Aslim Singh, welcome to the Guyana Dialogue.
Thank you for having us, and thank you firstly for inviting GAWU to participate. I've looked at few of your programs, and I know you've had the who's who of Guyana, so um, we're pretty honored to have this opportunity to speak to you and to speak to Guyanese, both at home and abroad, about two important topics. I think that our country has a long history in both in sugar and in trade unionism, and I look forward to the discussion tonight.
All right.
We are
Thank you.
happy to have you.
All right. Thank you very much. In the past, we have had policymakers, business executives, private sector senior position, but we never had a trade unionist. You happen to be the first trade unionist we are having on this program, where we are highlighting the situation in Ghana. We focus primarily on positive things. There are too many negatives out there. There is enough of that. So we focus on government policies and to educate our people of the various developments and progress the government has been making in various areas and to identify some of the challenges that they are working on. So I welcome you. I know you have a long and distinguished career in the trade union movement. You and I have been corresponding for quite a bit of time, and you have always been very responsive with information I requested on the sugar industry. So I want to take this opportunity to thank you very much for that. Before we start, I want you to give a general background. How do you feel the state of trade union is in Guyana? If you can make some general comments on that, then I will proceed to ask you specific questions. The last 10 minutes will be dedicated to question and answer from our viewers. So please
Okay,
proceed.
thanks. Sure, but I'm sorry. A piece of you when you were asking some segment, it was broken up. I don't know if you can repeat for my sake.
Oh, I'm asking if you can do a general review of the state of trade unionism in Guyana.
You're asking. Let me just make sure I got you clear. You're asking for a general overview of the situation in
Yes,
Guyana.
yes.
Okay, of course, I think as you said, we've been corresponding for some time on matters in sugar and some to some extent worker struggles. But generally, from the GAU's point of view, the situation in Guyana, we've described it before in speaking publicly as an exciting time in the history of our country. Um, we are now at the highest point economically we've ever been historically. And with the unlocking of those economic resources, we have seen massive development and massive transformation taking place in Guyana on several fronts. And we think, this augurs well for the Guyanese people and the nation as a whole. It's one of the best times, I think, as a somewhat younger person, to be a Guyanese. There's a lot to anticipate in the future. There's a lot to look forward to. And, GAU as an organization aims to play a role in that to ensure that that development that characterizes our country now is spread evenly and equitably across all Guyanese to ensure that we all receive the fruits of our natural wealth and the fruits of our labor and the fruits of our progress. So, I mean, to put it in a nutshell, as I said, it's a very interesting time in Guyana. It's a time where we have a lot to look forward to. I think many of the dreams of our people, both past and present, are now being realized or about to be realized. And the future is bright, and we anticipate that an even brighter future ahead. um, to summarize the situation in Guyana and how we see the situation in GAWU.
What about industrial relations, climate? You know,
Well,
you had a
okay,
recent strike with the teachers
oh,
lasting for several weeks.
right. So, of course, industrial relations climate, and I mean, the nature of industrial relations in our country has been somewhat confrontational at times, has been somewhat aggressive. Of course, as you mentioned, we had a prolonged teacher strike lasting several days, several weeks, and that is now over. I just read that the negotiations are continuing early this afternoon. But industrial relations continues to be characterized by sometimes, in our belief, issues that are not necessarily for the industrial table, for the bargaining table, but sometimes extraneous and extrinsic matters are being prosecuted at the industrial table. In fact, and you made mention of the teacher strike. During the teacher strike, our union, um, for no apparent reason, came under attack from by leaders of the Ghana Teachers Union and others for no other reason than for us doing our jobs. Our jobs are to advance the interests of the members we represent, the workers we represent, and we were criticized because we were able to score successes in that area. So it's unfortunate, and as I said, we see sometimes external issues which are not germane to the industrial questions being allowed to be prosecuted industrially, and that in itself is a challenge for the industrial relations in Guyana. um, you know I personally look forward to a changing dynamics in industrial relations where it is less antagonistic and more cooperative. GAWUs sought to promote that and sought to um, advance such an agenda. It may take it's not an overnight thing, unfortunately, but it will take work. It takes, I think, maturing of positions and being able to see each other across the table as equal partners, and we moving away. I mean, many countries, we've seen in different parts of the world moving away from this antagonistic, confrontational type of industrial relations, so more collaborative type of relations. But we're not there yet, and it's something I think as a country, um, as a trade union movement, we need to examine and to examine what are the possibilities of that happening, and at least to keep industrial relations matters industrial matters, and not seek to uh, pursue other agendas through the industrial relations paradigm.
Okay. What about collective bargaining agreements? Are those being honored, or
I
they're
mean, I can speak here. I can speak for GAWU, of course. I mean, I won't be able to speak for all unions in the country,
mm,
and what I'm familiar with. Of course, with the GAWU, of course, we take a very strong position to ensure and maintain that collective agreements are honored in all respects, because collective agreements bind both the employers to certain conditions and as well binds the union and its members to certain responsibilities as well. And that is one of the things in educating workers and the work we do in the GAU Labor College,
mm.
that while we teach workers of their rights and what they're entitled to and what their benefits and what are their conditions, we also take time also to educate them about their responsibilities at work. What are they expect? What is expected of them? What should they do? So GAUs, continue to place a lot of emphasis on the agreement because we see the agreement, that we hold the agreement as sort of the Bible between the parties. This is the rules of the game that the parties have agreed to. And where there are breaches, whenever we will pursue them. The grievance procedure allows us to address any breaches all the way up to the Ministry of Labor and even beyond, in the sense of arbitration. But we usually, we are able to resolve matters cordially, frankly, and to bring resolution in the interest of both sides. So, but this is, I'm only speaking here on the GAWU's perspective, and we have collective agreements with about 14 or 15 different employers. So, but we're able to address it. We have a structure through our shop stewards and our field officers, and it climbs all the way up to the top to me and the union's president. So we are very vehement in maintaining the principles of this collective labor agreement.
All right, thank you. Is the trade union movement still split into two, the FITUG and the other one,
TUC.
TUC? Yeah,
Mhm.
that still is that division is still there, right?
Right. Yeah. So that's an unfortunate reality of trade unionism in Ghana, that the workers' movement continues to be divided. There are some unions in the FITUG, GAWU, which is one. There are four unions in the FITUG, GAWU, the Ghana Labor Union, GLU, the Clerical and Commercial Workers Union, CCW, and the National Association of Agricultural and Commercial Employees, NACI. So four unions in the FITUG, and there, I'm not sure the exact number in the GTUC. Numerically, however, the FITUG is the large of the two federations, representing about 25, 27,000 workers aggregately, as against the other side, which I think maybe has, I'm not sure the exact numbers, and I don't want to speculate on the numbers. In fact, some years ago, under the former government, FITUG was forced to go to court to, for its right to be recognized as the most representative workers' organization in Guyana. And the court has actually pronounced on that, making FITUG that the most representative organization. But in spite of the numerical, there are certain differences that persist. While I think generally there are some issues we see eye to eye on in the trade union movement when it concerns certain matters. There are other areas where we that we continue to see the other side attacking us, and goes back to what I said earlier. The when we see the trade union movement is, as you would know, is founded on the principle of solidarity and collectivism, but yet you're seeing one union um, expressing negative views of the gains of another union, if and which is very disappointing for us. As you would know, under the past government, sugar workers did not receive a penny in pay increases between 2015 and 2020 during their term in office. But while the other workers in the other sectors of the state benefited from pay increases, at no time did GAU express criticism or denounce any other union for the gains they were able to obtain. But yet we see when GAU is able to get through its work and through its effort, other unions or some unions, I shouldn't say, some unions are expressing criticism, but um, there were attempts, or there was some semblance a few years ago prior to the election, where the two organizations were coordinating in some respects. Unfortunately, following elections, we saw the TUC seeming to take a new outlook and a more political outlook, um, and therefore it is political outlook in our view, I should add. And we have subscribed to workers' issues. We have subscribed to principles of solidarity, and not to seek to prosecute matters which are not necessarily germane to the workers' struggles at the trade union level.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's move on to sugar industry because that has been under the microscope for at least since the PNC led coalition now running into PPP. The past CEO has left and he's being replaced by Mr. Paul Chung. Paul Chung
Mhm.
himself has a distinguished career in farming. His grandfather was one of the biggest farmers in Guyana. As a matter of fact, in the village of Canal Number One, he used to supply milk to the entire village. He was a great livestock breeder, and he planted rice by acres. So on so we are glad that Paul has taken over the leadership, and I know he will work very closely with GAWU. But let's go back to the little history of GAWU. The sugar industry suddenly went into a slump after the European Union withdrew the 34% subsidy and failure to mechanize, etc. But at the time when the PNC led government coalition decided to close the sugar industry, how many workers were attached to GAWU then? You
Um,
have the figures
yeah, so, right. So at the
before the
time of the
closure of the four estates.
prior to the first essay, which is Wales closed in at the end of 2016, prior to that, you had about around 17 to 18. This is total, not including GAU, um, workers in the NASI category, workers in the senior staff level, and there are a small group of workers who are also represented by the Ghana Labor Union in the sugar industry. In totality, there are about 18,000 workers. Of course, it varies because in the in crop and the out of crop year, as you may know. But in totality,
Mm.
there were about 8,000 persons who were employed by Gaisuku directly at various levels in the company. So I mean
So
that
now,
mhm.
Guy Suku labor force is how much?
The last numbers I saw in again in totality is maybe closer to 8,500, 8,600 workers.
That's the current.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
quite a lot of people were laid off.
right. Yeah.
And
Well, apart from being laid off, you had just around 7,000, maybe 7,500 who were laid off. But because of the situation in sugar, where the and what I would deem the punishment to sugar workers, a lot of them also were forced out because of economic circumstances. They simply could not have afforded to or live on the earnings that persisted. I consider them the lucky few because many didn't have that chance or didn't have that opportunity.
Mhm. But apart from the workers who were laid off, you also had a lot of peasant cane farmers, for example. In Wales, 40% of
Right,
the cane ground by that factory was by peasant farmers, and they had a lot of
right,
employees. Um,
right. So
so this figure
you
of
had about
7,000 does not include the
correct.
peasant cane
That's what
farmers' labor force. Is that
right. I
right?
mean, I can tell you, right. I can tell you. I mean, Wales, which was the largest cane farming supplied estate at the time of its closure, had around 6 or 700 farmers, small and medium scale farmers, who were supplying canes to the factory there. Um, and so they also would have had pockets of employees engaged in different tasks on their farms. So you can imagine how quickly the numbers can add up there. And then
Hmm.
you would recall and know that the farmers were assured, I don't know if you recollect this, the farmers were assured that when Wales was closed, that a road would be constructed from Wales to Iford for the farmers to take their canes. That
Yeah.
became a pipe dream and still has never been delivered.
So, as we are in Wales, so let's talk about Enmore and Skellon Estate. What are the plans? Have you been involved in any discussions with the government how you'll transform Enmore Sugar Estate and Skellon
Well,
into
okay.
new
I mean,
economic?
right.
Go ahead.
I should make this disclaimer. We have an agreement with Guy Sukwan. I mean, legally we engage Guy Sukwan matters. We did meet the Minister of Agriculture not too long after we swore into office in 2020 to discuss, the government's plans and so on. We have been supportive. And because we have recognized the hardships created by the closure of estates, and the economic doldrums that many families and communities went into after the estates were closed. So we have been supportive of every measure that will bring back life to these villages, bring back employment to the thousands of workers who were laid off and who were basically left in the wilderness. But we have not had any formal discussions, but we are aware that, as you know, Rosa was reopened last year. Now, and I think both the president and the vice president have indicated that now attention will be focused on Skeldon. I think work is now beginning there to begin to recultivate some sections of that estate with the intention of restarting operations there. And more the situation is a little different, where a new idea or a new arrangement is being focused on there, where there's going to be an industrial estate established there, engaging in a number of different industries, and workers from former NMO workers, even current NMO workers, because when the government changed in 2020, workers were rehired in these estates in the process of reopening and maintaining the operations to some extent. So the workers at NMO will be transitioned to some of these new ventures. Apart from that, I did read the president saying that a sugar refinery will be sited somewhere in the vicinity of the NMO estate area. So, it gives a lot of hope for the villages and for the communities. And GAWU was an organization which championed the workers' rights, which stood with the workers during that period. I myself, engaging those workers and listening to their cries, listening, seeing their families and seeing their children, was very heartened by these developments. And we look forward to playing any role that can assist this process and hasten the process,
But
because we know of this. I'm
has the
sorry.
industrialization of Enmore begun yet, or is still in the drawing board?
I think, I know they're doing the last time I'm aware they were doing some of the developmental works to begin that process of transition, because a lot of it was former cane fields and so on. So it takes some development. There was as you know, the Enmore packaging plant is to be, or the former Enmore packaging plant is to be converted into an operation engaging oil and gas for the oil and gas sector. So some of the workers there will be transitioned when that operation becomes active. Will be transitioned into that
Mm.
venture.
And the packaging plant was transferred to Rose Hall or one of the estates
It's
in Borbies?
no, it's the Gaisuku plan is to transition it to Albion, where they're building a new building, and to transition that packaging plant to Albion. Albion being the biggest
Alvin.
operation in Guyana.
Okay.
It makes a lot of sense there to have the packaging plant there. And there's also one at Blairmont, which was existing before and is being expanded.
Okay. You said your primary role is to look after the welfare of your workers, to see whatever was in the collective bargaining they do enjoy these benefits.
Mhm.
Um, with the current pressure on the sugar industry to perform to increase productivity, how is our workers helping to improve productivity in their states? Uh,
Okay, well, sorry, go ahead. You finish?
Go ahead.
Right. So, productivity, and I was consistently spoken about the importance of productivity. As you know, the industry suffered several years of underinvestment during the last government. And that brought about a lot of inefficiency in the operations. Cane yields fell, production fell, investments in factories were stymied. So, I mean, when we look at inefficiency, we also have to examine the other operational inefficiencies, the deficiency at the level of the cultivation, the inefficiencies at the level of the cane transport routes to get to from the fields to the factories, then the inefficiencies in the factory itself to convert that cane into sugar. So, I mean, those are major problems that plague the industry and required some level of investment. I am aware that it's still a work in progress, because it takes some time to rehabilitate the fields. It takes some time to have the infrastructure rebuilt, and then the different elements in the factory which needs to be addressed. So that is one element of the to address the efficiencies questions in the sugar industry. But apart from that, workers have continued to put their shoulders to the wheel. And one of the things, together with Daisuku, they've now moved to more semi-mechanization for the instance of cane cutting. You may be aware of workers cutting and loading the cane, fetching the canes in roughly 100-pound bundles on their heads and loading them in the ponds. That is now slowly moving away. In fact, this cut and load system was the spark that ignited the struggle of the Enmore martyrs. But coming to the more modern times, so what has been happening? Workers, because they're using machines to load the canes, where they put them at certain points in the fields in heaps, and the machine comes and picks it up and takes it to the pond. Workers' productivity are doubling, and for some who are much more better, even more than double. So workers are contributing in that instance to improve productivity in the fields. Of course, the ability of workers, the limit of workers' productivity is also a function of canes available in the field. And as I mentioned, because of successive years of underinvestment, and then in 2021 in particular, there was a flood which also played havoc in the industry. The productivity of canes was also not there. So in the last year or so, because of the El Nino situation, more in the latter half of last year, the first half of this year, the industry has been able to finally do a lot of tilling and replanting. As I'm not sure if you're aware, each year the industry ought to till and replant about 20% of its cultivation. So a cane cycle is 5 years. That has not been happening for considerable periods. You have much older and older canes which are much more poor producing. So in the last year, a lot more tillage and replanting has been done, and there is the expectation now that there will be a much more bountiful harvest in the second crop, which will start around now. So, I mean, those are some of the elements that are being played. I mean, and workers are also being encouraged and incentivized also to be more productive. And we've seen in instances where there's adequate canes available, the workers are turning out and finishing their tasks and even doing more than they're required to do.
But when mechanization causes displacement of labor, does that worry you as a trade unionist?
Well, I mean, look, GAWU has long said this, that indeed, while the traditional thing is that mechanization may be a displacement to labor, in the instance of sugar in Guyana, it's augmenting labor because we also have the challenge of a more economic competition now in the labor market, and therefore the ability of the industry to attract and retain its labor is also becoming more difficult. So we are supportive of mechanization in the sense of augmenting labor and making labor more productive, because we see if a more productive industry, a more productive labor force improves the conditions in industry economically, which will redound to all parties in the industry. So we also see the necessity and the relevance of it in the scope of what is taking place in wider Guyana. So we're not averse to mechanization, we are supportive of mechanization because we recognize that it creates a new type of sugar industry, a new type of sugar workers. Sugar workers have maybe been seen by some as menial and backward, but this creates a new type of sugar work, a new type of skill set in the industry, which apart from making the work more productive, would attract a higher level of qualification and therefore greater pay and other conditions of work.
Okay, closely related to productivity is the idea of value added. It's
Mhm.
like packaging of sugar. How is that proceeding?
Right. So
Like
as I
packet.
was shared, right. So prior to the closure of estates, there were two packaging plants in the industry. One at Blairmont, which was a smaller one, and then the larger one at Enmore, which had the capacity to produce about 20,000, 25,000 tons of sugar annually. So when that estate was closed, that packaging plant was basically shelved. Packaged sugar, I should add, gives Gaisuku, or the revenue Gaisuku receives from packaged sugar is twice and sometimes even more than twice of what it receives for bulk sugar, which is the sugar usually would have exported to Europe. So there's a lot of value in producing more packaged sugar and in greater quantities. The good thing about it as well for Gaisuku, there's also a great demand for it, both locally and abroad. And I think that is why that influenced the decision to go into great packaging at Albion, where the ability is to sell greater volumes of packaged sugar and receive a greater revenue. So there's a lot of merit in pursuing packaged sugar. There's a lot of merit in this direction. In fact, apart from the packaged sugar now, guys, Suko has recently begun to produce what they call sugar sticks, which are the sachets in a more elongated form. And I think they for that I was told they get twice and even thrice what they get for the normal packaged sugar, which you may be aware of. So they already there's a lot of value in going in this direction. I think Guy Suku and the union itself has been always been supportive of looking at other ventures within sugar, and that is one of the proposals we had put to the former government when they consulted, and I use it in quotation marks, consulted us on the future of the sugar industry. Packaged sugar was a main pillar, apart from other areas that we had recommended and advanced, and we still believe it has merit. To diversify the industry's revenue base and to make it much stronger.
Yeah, the entire CARICOM region, the sugar industry has almost disappeared. So there's
Right.
great demand for sugar in the Caribbean alone. I think some estimates put it over 20,000 tons per annum.
No,
So
it's about
there is,
no, the Caribbean brown sugar demand, and there's also the white sugar demand. The Caribbean brown sugar demand is about 120,000 tons of sugar.
oh, there's so much now. Oh,
Yeah, I
well,
mean, you have like Trinidad maybe about 20,000, 30,000 by itself.
so so there is demand for sugar, and contrary to what people say that um, demand for sugar will decline because they're using alternative like Splenda and Sweet and Low and all these substitutes. Okay, coming back now to the sugar industry. Now, last year they had a projection to produce so much. Did they reach a target for last year?
Yeah, so last year the target was 60,000 tons, and they produced I think 60,200 odd tons. So they surpassed the target. So
Okay, what about this?
and
What about
this
this
year
year?
this year will be a little bit more difficult because what has happened, as I did share with you, they did a lot of tilling and replanting. But what
Mhm,
happened because of the drought situation, fresh water became a major challenge, especially in the earlier part of this year.
mhm,
Normally, and I don't know how much you're familiar with sugar, but canes are usually irrigated by gravity. It became so acute because the water levels declined so
mhm,
much that they had to mechanically use pumps to irrigate
mhm.
cane plants. Of course, that in itself was insufficient because they didn't have the volume of water they required. So it will become a bit difficult. I know guys who is relooking at these numbers and to examine because I think they need to really assess the situation carefully, having come out of this drought and the rains coming maybe the latter part of May, early June. So the plants are now in an active growing stage, and that is maybe we're still having some rains here, and I think they're trying to maximize as far as possible the rains to get maximum from the sugar canes.
So, so you're actually implying or suggesting that the target may be difficult to reach for this year because of the persistent dry weather?
Well, it will have an impact. However, on the positive side of it, they would have planted a lot more canes, and therefore there should be a greater volume of cane available. Whether it will reach the expectations, I mean, that is not too clear as yet.
Okay,
There are various numbers
all right.
floated about, but I don't want to get into that because it's not official at this point in time.
Okay. There has been some talk too about when we talk about productivity, about get higher yielding cane from some country in Latin America. I don't know if it's Guatemala or somewhere, but do you know if Gaisuka is pursuing that to get better yielding so it can get a higher sucrose content?
Right. So I know there were two attempts, or two. plans to one to bring canes from Cuba and to bring canes from Brazil. The Cuban canes, I don't think they have arrived yet, but there was some Brazilian cane brought early this year, and that has been planted, I think, at Rose Hall Estate. So as you know, cane is a 1 year growth cycle. So they're now
Mm.
looking at that to examine the viability of it, to look at the cane yield, so from the quantitative point of view, but also look at the qualitative point of view, what are the sucrose content is. So there are also those elements taking place because innovation has to be a part of the industry. Apart from that itself, the industry itself, as you know, will do cane breeding, and they also are examining some varieties which they have been producing at an experimental level for release at the commercial level now to also enhance sugar production.
Okay. The the new CEO who was appointed, Paul Chung, did GAWU met with him as yet?
Yeah, Gao would have met with him a few weeks ago to have a meeting to want to formally welcome him into his post. Of course, Paul Chung, another stranger to Gao. As you said, he was a cane farmer and he has a background. His family was in cane farming for many, many years. So he's not a stranger to the union, but want to welcome him in the post and to continue the good relations we've had with Gaisuku now for almost 50 years. And we recognize the importance of working together. We recognize that that no side has maybe all the answers, but collectively we can find reasonable solutions to to, to, to take us forward. So we would have met him a few weeks ago. We had some discussions on a number of matters. Mr. Chung and his team did commit to examining what the union has advanced, and was also committed to working with the union and addressing matters, and to look at the situation in a more holistic way. In fact, Mr. Chung, I saw on Gaisuku Facebook on a post yesterday, would have met some of the workers, I think, along the Borbis estates, to also talk to them about plans the corporation has under his leadership to improve its viability and effectiveness and efficiency.
Okay. When the sugar estate was going back, when the sugar estate was closed, or roughly around 2016, 2017, before, the study was done, an ILO study done by
Hmm.
this Dr. Singh at the UG,
Right.
and that pointed out to the social
Hmm.
ills that occur as a result of the, including two cane cutters committing suicide because they couldn't face their family because they couldn't provide food anymore. That's a
Hmm.
terrible situation, and there is a theory going around. I mean, this is not for you to answer, but you can make any comment that had a coalition not closed those estate, they had a good chance at the elections of 2020, and that closure was a significant part in the defeat. But that is a comment made by a lot of people, and I think it has some value to it. So, but sugar has been an important part of our culture, our history. Many communities could have not survived without sugar, and many of us who got our advanced education benefit from the sugar industry, whether it's scholarship or housing or jobs, whatever. So some people seem to overlook what sugar has contributed. When the sugar levy was imposed in the 1960s, it was calculated that over $132 billion sugar contributed to the general revenue of the country without any of those money being injected back into the sugar industry. Now sugar is a little difficulty. Government got to subsidize it about $5 billion a year, and they cry, why you put in money to subsidize this industry, get rid of it, etc. People forget what sugar has done. Had it not been for the sugar, the economy would have collapsed worse during the PNC running 60 to even to 2000. You're here to share your views on that.
Right. I mean, and you sound like a GAWU person there, Dr. Singh. I mean, those are expressions. We made during that time when the former government had decided to close and decided it's very, I would say, an anti-people policy against the sugar workers. It was very inhumane to see how sugar workers were treated under the former government. But I mean, you summed it up, and when you do reference to the sugar levy and the billions of dollars. But I mean, the billions of dollars is one thing, but the significance of what the industry has contributed to this country.
Mm,
Just to make a reference, in 1992, when the country was in the doldrums economically and socially, and so many other facets, the sugar levy alone was responsible for 25% of the budget. It was, I mean, it speaks of the significance and the significant contribution to the industry, and that is apart from other taxes and the other things that the industry has done and continues to do. Many of the villages along the coastal region, particularly the sugar belt, are not flooded because of the drainage irrigation system maintained by the sugar industry. That is, um, a lot of, as you said, health care for a lot of poor Guyanese in the sugar belt. They only obtained it because the sugar industry had dispensaries and whatnot to take care of people. Many houses were saved from fires because the sugar industry's fire apparatus were there.
mm.
Many Guyanese were able to become cricketers and other things because of the recreational facilities of sugar. So I mean, sugar has made a significant contribution. Its skill development, its contribution to skill development in Guyana alone um, vastly outweighs any subsidy you can provide to the industry. The Portmore Trade School is regarded as the best technical institute not only in Guyana but in the Caribbean, and has produced artisans that have worked not only in GAWU but in different companies in Guyana and abroad. So there's a lot of hue and cry about the support you're giving to the industry, completely ignorant, whether deliberately or not, of what the industry has contributed. In spite of the sugar industry being miniaturized under the former government, it still is the single largest employer in Guyana. There is no company that employs the number of people that Gaisuku employs still. So it speaks to the significance. I mean, and the provision of support, state support to sugar is not a unique situation in Ghana. In fact, in every sugar producing country in the world, even the USA, state support flows to the sugar industry in one way or another. And those are private businesses. This is in the instance of Gaisuku state owned private businesses and in many places, private businesses receive support of the state in one way or another to ensure their operation. So we are not different in any way. We are not unique. I remember reading a World Bank report and saying sugar is one of the most distorted industries because the price that sugar is sold for in the world market is vastly lower than the actual cost of production, and that difference is made up by state support. So I mean,
Yeah.
while there's a lot of people who say throwing it in a black hole and other characterizations, simply do not understand what sugar is, or whether they want to stifle their conscience. But
Well,
it helps us.
based on data I got from you all, GAWU, earlier, I did an analysis on the subsidy per capita sugar worker was far less than the per capita subsidy for electricity for bauxite workers. It's more than bauxite workers are more than 2 times per capita. So I point out to people who are criticizing the heavy subsidy and sugar, and they forget bauxite. They really meant bauxite. You get an annual subsidy over $4 billion annually,
Right.
but they seem to forget that. They only talk about subsidy, close down the sugar industry, close down the sugar industry, etc. Now, the the previous CEO, Singh, um, he has left, but how was your relations, the GAWU relations with him?
I mean, admittedly, we there were times we had some strained relations with him. It did blow over to the public, I think, once, where we had disagreements publicly. But I always strive to maintain a good relation with every CEO and every manager and everyone in the industry, because we recognize, the importance of having good relations in the interest of industrial relations, harmonious industrial relations predicated on respect, on principles, and equity and social justice. So we have always strived and always maintained, to the best of our ability, good relations with anyone in the Gaisuku management or in authority, because we recognize. But there were at times, instances of strained relations, instances of disagreements with him. And I think these are no natural parts of life. We may not always agree, see eye to eye on every matter, but we were able to work through them and realize answers in the interest of both sides. But there were times there were some strained relations.
I tried to get him in this program to talk a little about, but he never accepted the invitation. He always tell me he's busy. But there were a lot of some complaints from people, knowledgeable industry, saying how when he took over the industry, he, he get rid of a lot of people who had experience. And they mentioned the names of some of these people to me, and I don't know. I'm sure the union must be aware of it, and but I hope there is more stability in the staff now because that is important. He had complained before he assumed that office that the top management of Gaisuko was too heavy, um, and he will work to reduce the management structure so you get more money or resource flow to load on. I don't know if he was able to do that, but I hope the new CEO Paul Chung will be able to do that to look at the structure and this extraordinary pay scales that were developed for the expatriates. And I mean, you got to be linked to national wage rates. If you talk about equity and justice, the European style independent country now, and I don't know why they still keep this wage structure, because this anyhow. You want to make a final comment to that before we
Well,
introduce our viewers for question and answer?
I mean, we don't represent that level of staff, that high level senior staff, and so we're not familiar with. I mean, there are a lot of rumors about certain pay, but I mean, we don't work on rumors. We don't represent that, and we're not knowledgeable of that. I mean, I think Mr. Singh is the best person to be able to say to tout his achievements in the industry and to say what he has managed to achieve. Rather, I don't want to get in too much into that. I think that's better suited for him and for him to respond.
All right. We I want to ask you one final question. Does GAU play a very active role in helping present day farmers to to revive their cultivation, etc., give them technical advice?
No, I mean, there's a national cane farming committee who advocates and would address cane farmers issues. So there's a separate organization that speaks specifically to cane farmers.
So GAU has no role and no advisory or in that respect. So
Sorry,
if they
you
complain,
broke up.
if cane farmers complain they're not getting the right sucrose content for the cane, who do they report to? The national cane farmers or to
In the
GAU
national
or
cane
who?
farming, no, the national cane farming committee will address, I mean, those sort of complaints
And
in
they
terms
have
of.
access to Gaisuko management. Yeah.
Yes, I think there's a
All
there's
right.
a
Thank you.
there's a report which includes guys who people. So
Yeah, I
Dr. Tara, you're all
I
set?
now pass you over to our host, Shamiza Ali, to ask questions from viewers, whatever they may have. Over to you,
Sure.
Shamiza.
Thank you, Dr. Tara. We have a question from a viewer on YouTube. It says, Mr. Singh, that is what the coalition government would. Sugar is dead. It's not profitable. Okay, thought I saw questions from this viewer.
So, sorry, I
Could
don't
you
follow the
say how
question.
profitable Gaisuku is today under the PPP?
As I said, it's still a war, and I think I've heard the Minister of Agriculture said this on several occasions. The government intention is to nurture the industry back to break even. At this point in time, it's going through that process of being nurtured back after a lot of destruction, after a significant destruction it sustained between 2015 and 2020, apart from massive capital investment, the sudden closure of estates, the loss of assets, and so on. So it's now and now you're beginning the investment. Some of the investments are being able to mature, and you're able to see some turnaround. But I said it takes some time. So I mean, it's not at this point profitable, but it's getting healthier, and we anticipate it to continue to get healthier as it goes along.
Perfect. Now, can you tell us how many active sugar estates we have in Guyana right now?
There are four sugar estates active, functioning right now. There's starting from the east, there's Albion Estate, Rosal Estate, Bremont Estate in West Coast, Barbados, and an Iflot, which is in West Demerara. So there are four estates. Prior to the closure, there were three additional, seven in all. In addition to those four, there was Skellen Estate, which was closed in 2017, and Moore Estate or East Demerara Estate, which was closed in 2017 as well, and Wales Estate, which was closed in 2016.
So you're saying IFLET is still operational
Yes, Iford is the only operational estate in Demerara.
and Demerara. Perfect. Um, can you give us an average annual revenue of Gaisuku?
No, I'm not familiar with Guy Suku's average, and I think Mr. Chung or Mr. Singh, who would have those figures at hand, or, could possibly speak to that. I mean, I'm not too certain, and I don't want to speculate.
Um, in the week after next, we'll have Mr. Paul Chung on the program, and we can
Okay,
ask him that
we can
question.
definitely ask. Now, I know you speak of many things, right? Sugar and all the other things that Guyana is doing right now. And if you look at the comments, you'll see that people have their own idea. Some people are saying it's not profitable. Some people are saying it's profitable. Is there any other options, agricultural options that we're exploring? For example, hemp.
I know that and I did see the vice president making
Industrial hemp.
right, alluding to industrial hemp to be cultivated maybe in or around the Skeleton area. I don't know to what extent the government has addressed that, but I do remember in the former government, when they were closing these estates, they had touted several other agricultural ventures. And the one that struck me, and I still remember it until now, they were talking about going into duck production. And the duck production was their figures were so, I, um, I don't know what to use the word amazing, but it was so unbelievable that the guys who, or those whoever did
The
the
reception is not too good.
are you hearing me, Miss Ali?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay, yeah. So back to what I was saying. So the duck production thing would have yielded $500 million a month per estate, and it struck me, where was all of this duck being sold? So I mean, there were a number of different things touted, and we had said, look, some may have value, some may not have value, but Ghana is a very large place with a lot of arable land. and a lot of these ventures can still be pursued alongside sugar. In fact, look, the government is now is developing soya, black eye, and a number of other beans, and these are taking place not on lands that are formerly sugar cultivations, but are taking place on virgin lands in other parts of the country. So um, there might be other agricultural ventures, but we're not a country which is has a deficit of land. We can do sugar alongside these other agricultural ventures. And going back to sugar properly, sugar still has a lot of value. I mean, sugar still, apart from value added sugar, there's a possibility of ethanol, there's a possibility of cogeneration of electricity, and other areas where the industry can focus in to diversify and enhance its revenue base. So um, I'm not throwing the baby out to the bathwater and the other agricultural ventures, but I'm saying that, and this is GAWU's belief, that there are other areas where these can be pursued and maybe pursued successfully.
So right now, GAWU is not pursuing any of these at the moment.
No, well, GAWU is not engaged in the production of any crop or in the or in the agricultural business per se.
Got it. But if the venture is there, you'll definitely govern it.
Well,
That's
I
really
mean,
what you're
I
saying.
can't speak for that. I mean, that is a decision for the GAWU executive and so on. So that's something I
Got
can't
it. All
speak to.
right, we will now ask you for your closing remarks.
Okay. Well, as I said, and I end as how I begin. We're in exciting times. We are in times where we see a much brighter future ahead. An era in our country where I think our dreams, our long-held dreams, can become reality. I think, a critical element or an important element in our future will be sugar. I saw President Ali saying the other day and reiterating his government commitment to the industry that he believes, and I share his view, that Gaisuku can produce all the sugar that the Caribbean needs. Dr. Singh did allude to earlier that sugar in many other parts of the Caribbean has been downsized, and they, unlike us, have deficits with land. We don't have that. So I believe, sugar has a bright future. Sugar can play even a more meaningful contribution. There are initiatives now that are being forwarded to bring the industry up to standard, mechanization, improve yields, new varieties of cane, improving the factories, also the value-added initiatives like packaging, and there are some other things that I know guys who is examining um, to innovate and to make the operations much more efficient and to take it in a new direction, a direction which it should have gone to in a long time, but that's another discussion. But I think, sugar will continue to play a meaningful role. More on the trade union movement itself, I think the movement has made substantial contributions to the country. I do think, it has a lot of value still. It's unfortunate with some of the developments, but as I see, and I think you're both in the US, you've seen a renaissance of the trade union movement in the US in some states, and I believe, as things evolve in Ghana, we'll also see that here as well.
Thank you very much. And we thank you for taking the time to be here this evening. I know you're very passionate about what you do, and it tells in the way you speak about, your work and everything that you do. So thank you very much for being here today. Hopefully, we can have you back for another session. Dr. Tara, thank you for your time, and to all of our viewers,
Yeah.
thank you for taking the
Thank you very
time
much,
to be here
Shamisa,
this
and thank
evening.
you, Ms. Aslim Singh. Thank you for bringing to the public some of the issues connected with the sugar industry and in general with the trade union movement. So we want to thank you very much. And as Shamisa said, we'll have you another time to probe a bit deeper into this area of not only sugar but trade unions as a whole. Because I start out by asking you about what you think about the G2 strike as an example of the type of industrial relations climate in Guyana. So we thank you very much and continue to do your wonderful work with the trade union and GAWU in particular. And At a personal level, sugar industry is very dear to me. Both my parents were cane cutters,
Okay.
so I understand some of the difficulties that people went through and what sugar has done for my family as well as many in my village. So
Okay.
thank you very much.
Well, again, thank you both for having me. Thank you for inviting GAWU. Certainly, I like to continue discussion. We can find some mutual time, but thank you. And I also want to thank your viewers for tuning in and asking the questions. And I hope they were able to clarify some of the issues that they might have had. So thanks once again for having
Yeah,
me.
thank you,
Thank you.
Shamiza. Have a pleasant weekend.
Thank you.
All
I
right.
grew up in Iflat, so of course sugar is very dear to me, and so thank you very much. Again, to all our viewers, thank you for taking the time to be here this evening and listening to our guests. Thank you for your respect. Until next time, I'm your host, Shamisa Ali, and this is the Guyana Dialogue. Good evening, everyone.
Okay. Good night.